My dad grew up in a tiny little town in southern Indiana, just north of Evansville. The town is Owensville, Indiana. When he grew up, there were not a lot of things for the kids to do and the families to do. There was less than 1,000 people in the town. They took sports very seriously. My dad was captain of the football team, captain of the basketball team, and everybody in town came to see these events. They were treated like professionals. So he was 5'3", full of vim and vigor, a little Irish boy, Danny Waters. And Danny was the youngest of 3 boys. He joined the service, as did his 2 brothers, and his father before him was in World War I. Danny went into the United States Army Air Corps. It was the Air Corps before it became Air Force. So during World War II, he was in with a group of very nice young men. He was in England, and because he was 5'3", he was designated as the ball turret gunner. Because when you got in there, there was really no room to move around, which also meant no room for a parachute. This was fine as long as you were still in the air. He was shot down while he was in Germany, and he crushed his skull, which was really a miracle that he survived. The townspeople came, and because he was the enemy, they kicked him, broke his bones, broke his neck. It was actually the soldiers that saved him. One of the German soldiers, that without this man, he wouldn't have been alive. He wasn't really put in a POW hospital like they had, but this German officer became very attached to my father and would tend to his needs and stabilized his neck and made sure where his skull was crashed that it was clean at all times. And he would also try to share some of his food with my dad so that he could get strong enough to be able to leave the camp. I don't know if you're aware, I wasn't aware, that in Germany, all these little black dots represent different types of camps. They had hospital camps, civilian camps, general military camps, and airmen camps. And they separated and segregated the different POWs. My dad was in Stalag 3. And my dad tried 4 times to escape, but was caught every time. And but he did survive being in the camp. For the first year and a half that he was in the camp, all my grandparents knew is that he was missing in action. They did not know that he was alive for the first year and a half. You see, there's pictures here. There's, in this upper left-hand corner, is the name James Watkins. Jimmy was an artist, a very good artist. he started drawing people who were in their camp, drawing their portraits, and smuggling these portraits out with a chaplain. This is a picture of my dad right after training camp. This is the artist's rendition of my dad. So without ever seeing this picture, this is what the gentleman drew. There are also other people from the Evansville area, and he put on there if they were from Hobstadt, Darmstadt, Lincoln City, Vincennes, Ireland, Owensville, and on most of them he put when they were shot down. So through this chaplain taking a chance of smuggling out this picture, this was the first notification my grandparents had that my father was alive. My grandma used to say, I don't know what the happiest day of my life was, when he was born or when he was reborn. He wrote a letter. It was very, very difficult for them to write letters because they had to put it on specific forms. This is just a copy of the letter. There were only a few forms that were doled out at a time. So it wasn't that he didn't want to write his family. He didn't have the means to write his family. Now, when I read this letter, I want you to also know that my dad said he knew that his parents would be grieving. And so he tried to make it just as lighthearted as possible. And if you don't mind, I'll take a moment and I'll read this letter. Dear Mom, Dad, and all, this is December 25th, 1944. This is my second Christmas spent in a prison camp. But we are surely imprisoned to this earth. I ate dinner today with Jim Watkins and Jim Dixon. We saved food from our Red Cross parcel and had a swell time preparing the dinner. It wasn't so much, but it meant a lot to us. The cake was a little heavy, but it sure tasted good. Received a letter and 4 snapshots from my sister, his sister Emma Francis, 2 days ago. Also 2 letters from his girlfriend at the time, Rosalie. I would like to get more pictures of Bob, little Charles, Harrison, and Fred. DeWitt also received mail today. I hope you've heard from Charles Roll. He will clear up a few things for you. I have been a prisoner 1.5 years now, but I'm holding my own so far. Don't worry about me because this should be the end in a year now. In case Freddie gets any wild ideas before I get home, tell him to work them out with Bob. Tell Mrs. Madden that I think of her often and will write if I can. We need more form letters before I can write. Tom has a small group of comedians and a small band for camp entertainment. We make the most of what we have, and life isn't so dull as you might think. Even in prison, there's never a dull moment. Ben wrote that I received something but it was all blacked out. These censors sure keep us guessing. Hoping to hear from you. Love, Dan. So that was after a year and a half of being there. I also have a letter that is stamped, censored on it, that he received from his sister. My dad was in a B-17. That's what this is over here. I believe Tom said that it could go 190, 180, 190 miles an hour. Their planes could go 300 to 500 miles an hour. They flew in a formation called a fortress, so they could protect one another while in the air. I have a picture of my dad and his crew in England the day before he was shot down. It says BT above it for ball turret. And he was the shortest one. But this was, his plane was shot down July 26, 1943. He was actually in Vienna, Austria, in a POW camp first, and then he was moved to Germany. He came out of the Air Force, Air Corps. He married my mother. Their marriage didn't work. They both needed special attention. And so my dad re-enlisted and stayed in the Air Force until 1967. He said it was the best place for him because he felt he was too damaged to be with civilians. I often thought about that, about how he must have felt inside to not be able to be around the general public. He was a very good dad. He called my daughter his little rug rat. But he couldn't be around us for very long periods at a time because it was just too difficult. My dad passed away in 1982 at the age of 57. Someone totally ransacked his apartment before I could get there in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And they took all his medals and all of his memorabilia that he had there. It was very sad, but he was so tormented that it was a relief for him. I have a piece of shrapnel up here. And I don't know how many of you have actually been this close to a piece of shrapnel. As you can tell.
Were hit by head?
Yeah,
I was hit by one.
you got
were
hit in the
hit by
head,
one.
Much
yeah.
smaller than that.
Wow.
Here.
He was hit in the head by a piece of shrapnel.
There you go. Knocked me out.
For years, little pieces of shrapnel would come out of my dad's legs. And he would just say, just the passage of war, and it stays with you. I have the boots that he wore when he walked out of the camp 2 years later. I left them in the condition that they were in. The boots were too big for him. His toe only came to here. He lost several of his toes. They had very cold winters. They were literally peeling the wooden slats off the outside of the camp and bringing them in sparingly and using them to heat up the room. So they weren't quite as jolly as he portrayed it in his letter. I appreciate you coming today. This means a lot to my family and me. And I know my dad would have been so pleased to know that people care after all these years. They really care. So thank each and every one of the veterans here and the families of the veterans for all your love and compassion and support. It really means so much. Thank you.